So we're at the site of Ireland Park, which is a companion famine commemoration site to the departure site on the Liffey River at Customs House Quay in Dublin. And it commemorates the landing of 38,000 Irish migrants to Toronto in 1847, probably the worst year of the famine. To put that into a little bit of perspective, there were only about 20,000 people living in Toronto at the time, so almost twice the population lands here between June and October of 1847.
Why is this piece of history about First Nations helping with this relief fund so unknown?
We really don't know how this story was lost. There was one sentence in a report given by Lord Elgin in 1847 saying that the Indigenous people were interested in supporting the Irish and Scottish Relief Fund, which had been founded in Montreal in February of 1847. And beyond that, we really hadn't known all that much until a colleague and I stumbled upon the actual letter that petitioned these Indigenous peoples, at least in what is now the province of Ontario, if they would consider giving to help support what they said their white brethren who are starving and dying in Ireland and in the islands and highlands of Scotland. Each one of the letters mentions essentially similar things, particularly the letters that come from various Anishinaabe nations across the province. First, they are greatly distressed by what's happening in Ireland. Secondly, they bring it to council, and they unanimously agree in council that a donation be made. It's then signed with a totem, which is, in the Anishinaabe culture, deeply symbolic. It's not a signature. And so it's significant because the English who would look at the letter would say, well, he couldn't write in English, so he just put a picture. It's much more than that because it's deeply symbolic of a nation reaching out to the distressed of people that they are in treaty with.
So the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee people were as generous as they could be, even though our people were in pretty desperate situation themselves. But it was an act of kindness, and it was an act of honoring the treaties that we have with what our people called our white brethren who were suffering in Ireland at that time.
In Ireland, we're very familiar with the story of the Choctaws in the United States, and in fact, they have a very large and beautiful sculpture honoring that. This story is simply unknown, that the Indigenous here on what they would call Turtle Island, we call Canada, did fundraising as well, fundraising that was actually equivalent to that in the United States.
What made you want to dig deeper into this part of history and share it with people?
I thought this was an enormously important story that puts Indigenous honoring of treaties at the forefront at a time when we now recognize that settler colonial Canadians did not honor those treaties, and in fact went contrary to those treaties in the way in which they carved out this country. In a small way, a corrective on the Irish story to show the kind of empathy and generosity that was extended to them.
I think this is evidence of the reconciliation and the truth that comes out when people see that all our relations are human beings wherever they happen to be.